Welcome to Constitution Television, Constitution TV. I am Douglas V. Gibbs, your host. And one of the most common questions I get living here in the state of California is, what do we do about these renegade states? New York, California, these things that are going on that really are outside the spirit of the Constitution. Can't we get the federal government or the federal courts to get these states under control? And my response is, you don't want that. Let me give you an example. McDonald v. Chicago, 2013, 2014, right around there. What had happened is Chicago had banned handguns in the city of Chicago, and it worked its way through the courts. And the case eventually got to the Supreme Court. Now, as expected, the quote-unquote conservative justices said you could not ban handguns because the 10th Amendment says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The liberal justices on the Supreme Court stated, well, you can, as expected. You can ban guns, and here's what happened here. The Democrat, liberal left judges were right, but for the wrong reason. After that case had happened, I got all kinds of phone calls and emails from people saying, hey, Doug, it was a win for gun rights, and I said, don't be so sure. Think about what just happened. A federal court, the United States Supreme Court, just dictated to a city what it can or can't do regarding our gun rights. Is that a Pandora's box we really want to open? Yeah, but Doug, these states, these cities are out of control. I get it. I live in California. It's getting to the point where they've all but seceded from the Union and all but confiscated our guns. So I totally get it. Now, let's go back to authorities and original intent. The greatest fear by the founding fathers was that the federal government would stomp all over our rights. The federal government is the greatest threat to our rights. Therefore, the Constitution was written in a manner to create this federal government, but limit it in its powers. Only give it certain authorities. Then, after they wrote the Constitution, just to make sure that the federal government understood that it could not stomp on our rights, a Bill of Rights was created. And right there in the very First Amendment, it begins, Congress shall make no law. Last words of the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. First words of the Third Amendment, no soldier shall. Fourth Amendment, right in the middle, shall not be violated, and so forth. In other words, the Bill of Rights was written to tell the federal government, hands off, none of your business. Our rights belong to us. And if you read the preamble of the Bill of Rights, it explains that the purpose of the Bill of Rights is to restrain the federal government, to make sure that it doesn't act in a tyrannical manner. The states were not a concern. Why? The states are closer to the people. So it's the people's job, responsibility, obligation, and duty to restrain their states. Now, we are not a pure democracy, but if you look at the way things were originally set up, there were certain levels of democracy, and the closer government got to the people, the more democratic it became. Give you an example. At the federal level, the only democratically voted representatives in the beginning was for the House of Representatives. The senators were appointed by the state legislatures. The president was elected by electors who were appointed by the state legislatures. Now, the people did have an influence on the electors. The people's job, we the people's job, was not to vote for president, but to campaign for our president, to convince our elector to vote for the guy we wanted our elector to vote for. So, the only Democratic vote we had at the federal level originally was House of Representatives. Then you go to the states. The state assemblies or state House of Representatives, those were voted directly by the people, democratically. The governor voted by the people democratically. But the state senators were not voted in by the people. The state senators were appointed by the county leadership. And it was one senator per county. So it wasn't about democracy trying to split up the population like they do now, where Los Angeles County has 13 state senators when they should only have one, yet in the rural areas you got like 4 or 5 counties stuck together getting one. So that's not the way it was supposed to be. The state senates were supposed to be like the U.S. Senate, where there was a senator per county. Anyway, so our Democratic vote were for two things at the state level. So one thing at the federal level, two things at the state level. Then we go to the county. Democratically vote in your county supervisors. Democratically vote in your sheriff. Everybody else for the and you democratically vote in some states judges and some other positions like county treasurer and things like that. The rest of the positions are either appointed or they work their way into those positions. So, like city clerk, they get hired, things like that. Or county clerk, I'm sorry, they get hired. Now, so county level, though, you do have more Democratic vote than you do at the state level. The state level is only two things. County level could be 3, 4, 5 things, depending on how big the county is, how many judges, plus your sheriff and your county supervisors. You probably have, 4 or 5 county supervisors, something like that. So then you get to your city. You vote for your city council members, and they are your direct representation. And they hire then the city manager. Unless there's a mayor, then you vote for your mayor, and they take over the job of the city manager, and then you don't have a city manager. Often in some cities at one time, police chiefs and things like that were voted in. Now they're hired by the city councils. But the idea is that the city is closest to you, and so you're supposed to be directly involved democratically with the cities. So it becomes more democratic as it gets closer to you. Okay? So therefore, why would the Founding Fathers worry about the states? They're closer to the people. They're our responsibility. The Bill of Rights was not written to the states. It was written to the federal government. Now, as time passed, there was this philosophy, this doctrine of incorporation of the Bill of Rights to the states, which I think is dangerous, and I don't believe that it was technically put into place by the 14th Amendment. That's for another time to talk about. But to me, it's very dangerous because let's go back now to our gun rights. Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. If the Second Amendment only applies to the federal government, what it's saying is every single gun law is unconstitutional. Now, if we apply that also to the states, then that would mean that every single state law regarding guns would be unconstitutional. Well, then nobody would be allowed to make any gun laws. Now, on the surface, that seems great because, hey, our right to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. And I agree in the sense that, like, for example, if you look up the word bear in the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, it gives an example of such as a gun under one's coat. So to keep is to own or possess. To bear arms is to conceal carry. I have a right to conceal carry, and there should be no federal law whatsoever interfering with that. However, the Founding Fathers understood that there would be and should be some laws that states regarding our rights would need to take care of. And in fact, in Federalist 45, James Madison explains that. He indicates that the powers given to the federal government are few and defined, and the ones given to the states are numerous and indefinite. Then he goes on to explain, and let me read this from Federalist 45, the powers reserved to several states will extend to all the objects which in the ordinary course of affairs concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people. There's your rights. Federal government can't touch that stuff. States can. And the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. The operations of the federal government will be most extensive and important in times of war and danger, those of the state governments at times of peace and security. And earlier in the Federalist 45 explains that the authorities that remain in or given to the federal government will be exercised principally on external objects as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce. And then he goes back to what we just said about the states, where it's the internal thing. So life, liberty, internal order, all that, that's up to the state. So that means there should be a law not allowing a child, perhaps, to go to the gun store and buy a gun. There should be a law, maybe, depending on what you believe, not allowing someone who is a convicted felon who has maybe a history of use of firearms in a burglatory manner or something shouldn't have a gun. Okay, but who makes those laws? Because Second Amendment's clear. Shall not be infringed. Federal government cannot make any laws regarding guns. That responsibility falls on the states. So the states can make gun laws. They can make other laws. They are not bound by the Bill of Rights in the same way that the federal government is. Now, don't get me wrong. Those are still our rights. Not because they're listed in the Bill of Rights, but because God gave them to us. So I still have a natural right to keep and bear arms. So the state is supposed to still abide by that because it's understood those are my rights. They're not supposed to mess with them. But it's not the Bill of Rights or the federal government's responsibility to keep the states from infringing on those rights, because they do have a certain amount of authority regarding those things. They can make those laws. Well, who put the representatives in place to make those laws? We did. Therefore, it's our responsibility to make sure that the states are not infringing on our rights. So it says, well, gosh, Doug, California is, going up against the Second Amendment with all their gun laws. No, they're not. They're going up against my right to keep and bear arms. Second Amendment was written to the federal government. Shall not be infringed with the federal government. That doesn't mean I don't have a right to keep and bear arms in my state. I do. My right is not dictated by the Bill of Rights. It's dictated by the fact that God gave it to me. And it's my responsibility, and all of my fellow Californians' responsibility, to get them to cut that garbage out. We have the only state constitution that doesn't have a single word about gun rights in it. Why that is, I don't know. It needs to be changed. But my point is this: it's our responsibility. Someone says, yeah, but Doug, they're doing this, they're doing this. Well, then don't let them. And I get it. That's a tall order. I get it. Especially California and New York. What do you do? I was reading an article a couple weeks ago where in the United States, the liberals outnumber the conservatives in 6 of those states. And I'm sure California and New York are 2 of them. So how do you fix the situation? Well, the Founding Fathers even put mechanisms in place for that. You have basically 3 choices when it comes to your state. Put up and shut up, fight to change whatever it is that's got you ticked, or leave. Vote with your feet. Now, and California's experiencing this now, an exodus. And as the exodus leaves California, the constitutional consequence of that is the population goes down. So that means that California would have less representation in the House of Representatives and less of power when it comes to electing the president, because their electoral college number is going to go down. Now, I get it. There's the illegal alien thing, and they're getting counted, and that's what the Democrats are trying to do because they understand what they're up against here. I'm telling you the way it's supposed to be. Now, personally, I'm not going to run for California just yet. I'm going to try to defend my state. But get back to the whole point of this whole thing. Renegade states, what do we do about it? We get off our tufts, and we do what we got to do. We fight for those states. In the country and in California, the statistics about the same in both places. Just to give you an example. Among evangelicals, Christians that consider themselves evangelical Christians, of those who are eligible to vote, 49% are registered. And of those who actually vote, only half of those registered vote. That means 1 out of 4 evangelicals are voting. In California, we have more registered gun owners than any other state other than Texas. Yet, less than half of the registered gun owners in California vote. So if you've got less than half of the gun owners voting and only 1 in 4 evangelical Christians voting, and most of the other denominations, the number's very similar. You get in the Protestants, it's about 1 in 4 that could be, and so on and so forth. Well, then no wonder we're in trouble. While this country is not supposed to be a pure democracy, when it comes to your states, you do have more democratic control and vote because your state's closer to you. That's the way it's supposed to be. Each state's different, and the people are supposed to run their state the way they want it run. And if it's not being run the way they want it run, then it's their job as constituents to whip it into shape. Now that said, if it gets too out of whack, or it becomes a, I don't know, Marxist, communist, kind of too late for California now, but then in Article 4, Section 4, it does say the United States has the responsibility to ensure that each state has a Republican form of government. And you know what? The federal government's already fallen down on the job with that, because part of it being a Republican form of government is that it's not a pure democracy. There are checks and balances and a dual constituency. In the case of the state of California, or states, period, the dual constituency is supposed to be that the counties should be appointing their state senators. Now, that was changed nationally by Reynolds v. Sims, I believe 1967. And it was an unconstitutional ruling. First of all, why is a federal judge dictating the states what they can or can't do regarding their own government? Second of all, why is the federal government telling all the states to move away from the Republican form of government and towards a democratic form of government when it says right there in Article 4, Section 4, that the United States shall guarantee each state has a Republican form of government? But that's for another discussion. My whole point is this, get back to the very beginning. What do we do about the renegade states? We fix them. We fight for them. And if worse comes to worse, we walk away. And when we walk away and they collapse from within, that'll be the consequences of their actions politically. I'm waiting for California to become another Detroit, but at the state level, maybe Venezuela. But nonetheless, I actually believe there's hope. Like I said, only 1 in 4 evangelicals are voting. Less than half of the gun owners that are registered are voting. I don't know what the number is of people actually have guns that maybe don't have them registered. This state can be turned around. This country did something amazing in 2016 and said no to Hillary Clinton and voted in a businessman that's not even a political guy. He's not even a Republican or Democrat, because the American people is like, we're sick of this garbage. Let's get someone in here who'll do the job. I'm wondering if that'll happen in California. Well, it won't happen in California unless Californians who have half a brain get off of their tufts and get out there and get involved. And they vote, they influence their representatives, and they do all the things that it takes. This garbage about, well, gosh, Doug, California's out of control, we need the federal government to fit. No, we have been lazy. We have not been doing our job as citizens. It is not the federal government's job to make sure California behaves. It is our job. It is not the federal government's job to make sure New York behaves. It is the citizens of New York's job. And when they're voting in people like Blasio and Bloomberg and Ocasio-Cortez, there's a serious problem going on. California, Gavin Newsom, Pelosi, Maxine Waters, to name a few, we've got some serious problems going on. And the only thing that can fix it is us. What do we do about our renegade states? We fix it. And I'm a firm believer that while I mentioned earlier voting with your feet and leaving and it hurting the state, I get it. I understand why a lot of people are doing that. I'm one of the last people in my family that are staying in the state. My sister moved a year and a half ago to Arizona. My brother's talking about going to Arizona. My parents are talking about going to Arkansas. But the problem is, leftism is like a virus. Look what California's leftism has done to Oregon, Washington, and Nevada. Look what the leftism that was brought to Colorado and New Mexico has done. Look at the cancer in the northeastern states. Or should I say virus? It spreads. So be honest with you, conservatives, those of you who live in blue states, I would rather you stay put. I'd rather you fight the good fight. And I'd rather you find the other people in your state that think like you and get them to fight the good fight. And I get it, because like here in California, the Republican Party is very frustrating. They would rather lose with a Democrat light candidate than win with a conservative. We just had our California Republican Party chairman election with the delegates and with the proxies and all. It was stolen. Jessica Patterson beat 2 conservatives. And she's a part of this New Way California movement with Schwarzenegger and a guy named Chad Mays and McCarthy. And these are moderate, left-leaning, almost, Republicans. Lukewarm, not even lukewarm, cold. But, so I get it. We're up against a lot. Quit crying and fix it. Throw those people out. Find a way. America was founded on a fighting spirit, on a can-do spirit. The American Revolution was fought against the greatest military in the world. And I tell you what, there was a lot of doubting Thomases saying, there's no way we're going to pull this off. And Benjamin Franklin afterwards said, hey, the only way we won that war was because we were on our knees in prayer. So pray about it and get active. Take care of your renegade state if you're in one. And if you're not in one, thank God you're not in one. And please pray for us and do what you can to help. Because I tell you what, it is a cancer. It is a virus. We let leftism finish off California, finish off the left coast. It'll keep spreading. Thank you. My name is Douglas V. Gibbs, douglasvgibbs.com, politicalpistachio.com. If you want to donate to my efforts, go to either politicalpistachio.com or douglasvgibbs.com and find the yellow donate button. Click that. You can donate one time, monthly, because I tell you what, it costs money to do everything I do, and this is what I do for a living now, and every penny helps. Also, don't forget, we got books out there. Go to douglasvgibbs.com/books.php, or just find my titles on Amazon. My oldest book, the first one was 25 Myths of the United States Constitution. The latest one, due out this week, A Promise of American Liberty. Big book. And then there's a bunch of them in between. Thank you for watching, and please stay constitutional. See you next time.